Greetings and welcome to my channel. This is Sorcerer Tal. You can also find me on Facebook in the Sorcerer's Guild. Today on Sorcerer's Shadow Volume 2, we are going to be talking about the first essay in the volume, and that is the mechanics of how magic operates within the Veil. Now, like I said in the introductory video for this playlist, I am going to divide this essay into separate portions for each one of the laws of sorcery. This first one, we will first be talking about exactly what the difference is between high or astral magic, which we focused a lot on in Volume 1, and low or folk magic, which we will be focusing in this volume, and why there is a difference on how the two operate. And then we will also discuss the law of perceptions and how it affects the law of perceptions. Then next week we will go on to the law of repetitions and so forth. Okay, now there will be a link to a Google Docs copy of this essay in the description portion of the video, so that if for any reason you cannot purchase a copy of the Sorcerer's Shadow Volume 2, you can go to that link and still have access to the essay itself. However, if you would like to purchase a copy of the Sorcerer's Shadow Volume 2, it is available on Amazon in both the paperback form as well as an ebook, and I will leave a link to that here. Okay, so how magic operates within the Veil is quite different than how it operates on the astral plane. Well, there are several differences. For one, on the astral plane, intent is very important. As I say in the essay, when you hear someone say intent is all that matters, they're speaking of magic that operates on the astral plane, and that's your sigil magic, where you draw something, where you draw the sigil with a pen and then bring it to life after that with blowing on it, that sort of thing. Depending on how you charge it, you can put the sigil in other places. Some of the most traditional methods of sigil charging that are in the chaos magic community, that actually would technically be folk magic, because, well, you're using a bodily fluid to charge it, but that's not as common as it used to be. A lot of times, the techniques that I use, we're talking about breath work, that sort of thing, to energize a sigil, or even putting your energy into it as you charge it. That is creating a form on the astral plane. And that has, I don't want to say time, but it has more duration. It has more options as to how to manifest in a moment on the material, into a moment on the material plane. Because the way a moment happens, it starts on the mental plane as information, and then that information begins to move and becomes information and transfer energy, and then that energy condenses around a moment, and manifests on the material plane. And so when we cast a sigil on the astral plane and create the form portion of the spell there, it has the threads to weave. Yeah? It has much more options as to how to move those threads around. Now, as it passes through the veil and gets tied into the knots and patterns of a moment and the weaving of the tapestry, that is the material realm, there are already patterns forming within the veil. So we are trying to affect the threads as they weave into knots. So there is a lot of momentum and precedence of what has already been woven in as it passed through the astral realm that we are working with. So when we are working with magic that is within the veil, it is important not just to have that resonance within the self of the form we are creating, but also to use a form that resonates with that momentum and precedence that is related to that form and the spell work with which we are casting. Because, well, it has to. There's no longer threads. We are working with patterns, and we have to match those patterns and fit into that in order to have any effect. Yeah? So, the rules are a bit more strict, but that doesn't mean we have to adhere to dogma. For one, the spell still has to resonate with you. You still have to be linked to it. So that part is still very important. And personalized spell work is going to work better. Even when you are following old folk magic recipes, you need to personalize them and link them to you to give them that real potency. That being said, you do need to try to use the correct ingredients when using this type of magic for the exact reasons I described above. Yeah, there is a big difference in where we are in the manifestation process of a moment, and we have to take that into account. Now, so why would we use material magic then? It can have a much more powerful and potent effect under the right circumstances. Like I said, there is no hierarchy here. Astral magic, or I call high magic because it is operating from above. And then folk or low magic, or magic operating within the veil or the material realm, I tend to call folk or low magic because it is operating from below, where high magic is. It's still not quite on the material plane, or else it would just be straight science, but it's in between, an energetic equivalent of the material plane, or the veil, as we have discussed before. Okay, so that is why things operate a little bit different with this type of magic. Now, how does that affect the law of perceptions? Belief imparts reality. The imparts becomes much more significant in the belief imparts reality. On the astral plane, belief is a very powerful tool. By your belief alone, if you have it strong enough, you can create immense power within the threads that then need to be woven down. Once you are working within the veil, the impart becomes much more significant because there's momentum and precedence, and a single person's belief does not have that amount of effect. Like I said in the essay itself, somewhat you could easily, if you understand what you're doing, convince everyone that there was a hole in a wall. And if you convince them all well enough, because of how illusion works and the mental plane, when we get to the mental plane, that's actually where illusion comes from, is by bypassing the astral realm and overlaying the mental plane or information over top of the physical world. But that will be in volume 3, and that's where belief imparts reality is at its most powerful, is on the mental realm. But it's still quite powerful on the astral realm, and it has its great effect on the physical realm as well. But, as I was saying, you could easily, given the right understanding, convince many people that there was a hole in the wall, and people in that room could even swear that they saw people pass through that hole in the wall. But anyone who tries to pass through that hole in the wall, the illusion will be broken for them by the momentum and precedence of the wall's existence, when they try to walk through a hole that is not there, except for on the mental plane. So, I am not saying that there is no power to belief on the physical plane. We simply have to look at things like the placebo effect to see that there is very much power in belief imparts reality, especially when we are doing healing works. Now, one thing I want to say, since I'm bringing up healing works in this moment, is they should be done in conjunction with Western medicine. Yeah, I am not anyone to be telling you not to use science. They should be used in conjunction. That is the point here. But more back to my point is that perception helps create reality, but it must be put in with repetition and given time. Yeah? Often when you cure people with the placebo effect and the belief that they are getting better, it's with repetition. They don't just take one sugar pill. They take sugar pills every day. And then there's also the momentum and precedence involved there of, well, if you take pills, then you get better. And that precedence, even when people don't fully believe in it, know that they're taking a sugar pill, can still have an effect beyond their belief. But the general belief in existence that if people take a pill, they get better, pushes on that. And it pushes much harder there on the material plane than anywhere else, because that's where all that momentum and precedence has its big push, its wave. That's where the wave crests and pushes, is on the material plane. So, even though the impart part is the most important on the material plane, and this is the plane where the rule or law has the least effect in some ways, it is also where it has a lot of oomph of the gathered belief and momentum of what typically happens in a thing. And that's why, as we'll talk about in the next law, the law of repetition, things tend to follow patterns even onto the material plane. It's because of this momentum and precedence of when this happens, this is what happens next. This is why history repeats itself. Okay. So, I believe that will be it for this episode. Like I said, next week we will be talking about the law of repetition. Hopefully that episode will be coming out on Saturday as well. In the meantime, I have some other things that we will be talking about during this week, so there should be some more videos between now and next Saturday. But either way, next Saturday we will be talking about the law of repetition and how it is affected by the material plane, or working within the veil. Okay, anyways, that'll be it for this episode. Thank you once again for joining me. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please take the opportunity to do so now. Until next time, bright blessings and an interesting fate. This has been Sorcerer Tal.